$6 million. $15 million. Somewhere in that gap sits the entire financial legacy of a woman who spent 3 decades building an empire in front of cameras, and whose family is now left sorting through the wreckage of both a fortune and a grief they never expected to carry twice. On August 16, 2026, Hayden Panettiere was found unresponsive inside a residence in Greenville, South Carolina, for days before what would have been her 37th birthday. According to the Greenville County Coroner's Office, first responders arrived to a 911 call reporting a person in cardiac arrest, and despite advanced life support measures, she was pronounced dead at 2:32 in the afternoon. An autopsy performed the following day found no signs of trauma, though the official cause and manner of death remain pending. CNN later reported that the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration had joined the investigation, a detail that surfaced days after her passing, and added another layer of uncertainty to an already confusing timeline. What is not uncertain is the scale of what she leaves behind, and how complicated that legacy has become in the days since her death. Her father, Alan Skip Panettiere, released a short statement through her representative, describing his daughter as an incredible light and a force of nature who brought love and joy to everyone who knew her, both personally and through the millions who watched her on screen. He asked, as most grieving parents do, for privacy. That request has been almost impossible to honor, because Hayden Panettiere's life, and now her death, sits at the intersection of everything the public cannot look away from. Fame acquired before she could read, a fortune built across more than 3 decades, a documented history of abuse, and a memoir published just months before her death that now reads less like a book and more like a warning nobody caught in time. According to reporting from Fox News and NewsNation, Panettiere had flown from Los Angeles to South Carolina the day before she died, alongside her on-again, off-again boyfriend, actor Brian Hickerson. CNN's reporting placed a location at the Judson Mill Lofts in Greenville, a residence where the coroner's office said she had been temporarily staying. Greenville police interviewed Hickerson and his brother Zach, who told an officer he had made the 911 call. Investigators have released few additional details, and much of the official police report remains redacted. What began as a straightforward statement about an untimely death has, in the days since, turned into a slower and more complicated inquiry. One that the family has had to watch unfold in public view even as they try to grieve in private. To understand why the reaction to her death was so immediate and so widespread, it helps to go back to the beginning, because there was almost no point in Hayden Panettiere's life when she was not working. Born in Palisade, New York, in August 1989 to Leslie Vogel, a former soap actress, and Alan Panettiere, a fire captain, she appeared in her first commercial before she was a year old. By 4, she had a recurring role on ABC's One Life to Live. 2 years later, she moved to Guiding Light, where her character storyline dealing with leukemia earned her early recognition from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. She voiced Princess in Pixar A Bug's Life, played Cheryl Yost opposite Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans, and spent her early teenage years in family films like Ice Princess and Raising Helen. None of it fully explains what happened in 2006, when a 15-year-old cheerleader with the ability to heal from any wound turned her into a household name almost overnight. Claire Bennet on NBC's Heroes kept her on primetime television for 4 seasons, and when that show ended in 2010, she moved almost immediately into the role of Juliette Barnes, an ambitious country singer on ABC's Nashville. That part earned her 2 Golden Globe nominations across a 6-season run and cemented her as one of the most recognizable faces in Music City, even though she had built her early career 3,000 miles away in front of soap opera cameras. She later played Kirby Reed across 2 Scream films, lent her voice to the Kingdom Hearts video game franchise, and voiced Kate in Alpha and Omega. Her final credited role came earlier this year in the direct-to-video thriller Sleepwalker, a quiet closing chapter to a career that touched nearly every corner of the entertainment industry, from daytime drama to network prestige television to horror franchises to animation. That career is also where most of her reported fortune came from. Industry estimates place her per-episode salary on Nashville at roughly $75,000, which across the show's 124-episode run would work out to somewhere near $9 million from that role alone. Heroes reportedly added close to $2 million more, with additional income from endorsement deals including Neutrogena, Candies, Kohl's, and Dooney & Burke. She bought a home in Hollywood Hills in 2008 for roughly $2.6 million, sold it in 2014 for just over $3 million, and later sold a Nashville property in 2018 for $1.65 million. Even with that trail of numbers, outlets have struggled to land on a single figure for her final estate, with reported valuations ranging anywhere between $6 and $15 million. That gap is less about missing information and more about how unreliable celebrity net worth estimates become once you move past a single salary headline, especially for someone whose career spans so many different formats and decades. But the story that has resurfaced most in the days since her death has almost nothing to do with money and everything to do with a decision she made as a teenager that most of her fans never fully understood. In October 2007, as a spokesperson for the Whaleman Foundation's Save the Whales Again campaign, an 18-year-old Panettiere joined Sea Shepherd activists paddling into a cove in Taiji, Japan, attempting to disrupt the town's annual dolphin hunt. The confrontation was later captured in The Cove, the documentary that went on to win the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. She returned to Taiji again in 2010. That activism ran deeper than a single headline-grabbing trip. She delivered protest letters to the Norwegian and Japanese ambassadors calling for an end to commercial whaling, joined the celebrity board of Ronald McDonald House Charities, and became a vegetarian in her late teens. A friend and former colleague, D.C. statehood advocate Kevin Strauss, told reporters after her death that she consistently used her platform for causes she cared about, singling out her whale conservation work as an example of a special soul gone way too soon. In his words to Fox News, her private life, though, is where the harder parts of the story live, and where her own memoir has forced the public to reckon with a version of her that rarely made it into tabloid coverage. Her most consequential relationship began in 2009 with Ukrainian heavyweight boxing champion Vladimir Klitschko. The two were engaged by 2013, and in December 2014, Panettiere gave birth to their daughter, Kaya, in Hawaii. The relationship eventually ended, and in 2018, Panettiere relinquished primary custody of her daughter to Klitschko while she sought treatment for alcoholism, substance abuse, and postpartum depression, a decision she later described publicly as one of the most difficult of her life. Kaya, now 11, has grown up primarily in Europe with her father, while Panettiere remained involved through visits and long video calls whenever her schedule allowed. Her relationship with actor Brian Hickerson, which began not long after a split from Klitschko, was marked by a documented and disturbing pattern of legal trouble. According to court records reported by multiple outlets, Hickerson was first arrested in 2019 on a felony domestic violence charge, and arrested again in February 2020 in Wyoming, accused of punching her in the face. By that July, he faced 8 separate charges tied to the relationship, including multiple felony counts of injuring a spouse or girlfriend and assault with a deadly weapon. Panettiere spoke publicly about the case that same month, writing that she hoped coming forward with her story would help others in abusive relationships find the courage to seek help. Hickerson ultimately pleaded no contest to 2 felony counts in 2021, receiving jail time, probation, mandatory domestic violence classes, and a 5-year protective order barring contact with her. The two later reconciled, and reports placed them together again in the days before her death. Grief compounded these struggles in ways few outside her immediate family fully understood. In February 2023, her younger brother, Jansen Panettiere, also an actor, died suddenly at 28 from complications tied to an undiagnosed heart condition. She wrote about that loss in her memoir and described it in interviews as something she never fully processed. That memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, was released through Hachette in May 2026, just 3 months before her death, and became an instant New York Times and USA Today bestseller. In it, and in a Hollywood Reporter interview tied to its release, she described being treated as a little soldier from childhood and detailed experiences with addiction, recovery, trauma, and domestic abuse in language that reads, in hindsight, like someone trying to make sense of a life that had asked far too much of her far too early. Following news of her death, Newsweek reported that Barnes & Noble quietly removed the book's discount pricing as demand surged, a small but telling detail about how quickly her final act of honesty turned into the way the public would choose to remember her. What she left behind, in the end, is difficult to reduce to a single number, and perhaps that is the most honest way to describe it. There's an estate valued somewhere between $6 and $15 million, a spread wide enough to say more about the unpredictability of celebrity finances than about the woman herself. There's a body of work spanning more than 3 decades, stretched across soap operas, network dramas, horror franchises, and animated films. There's a daughter who will grow up with her mother's own words in print rather than secondhand tabloid summaries. And there's a family, her mother Leslie Vogel and her father Skip, who have now had to bury 2 children within 3 years of each other, absorbing a kind of grief that no inheritance, however large, could ever offset. Whatever the ongoing investigation in South Carolina eventually determines, the parts of Hayden Panettiere's legacy that mattered most to her were never really about the money. They were about a teenager who paddled into a Japanese cove because she believed it mattered, a mother who made an agonizing decision because she believed it was best for her daughter, and a woman who spent the final months of her life writing down every difficult chapter of her own story, so that someone else struggling with the same things might feel a little less alone. That part of what she leaves behind doesn't depend on appraisal or an estate filing. It is already permanent, printed in her own words, in a book that will likely keep being read long after this week's headlines fade into the next news cycle.